I am a 22-year-old freelance journalist living in Seattle. I write for a small local tech and news blog. Usually I cover mundane stories, app launches, city festivals, that kind of thing. I never thought anything like this could happen to me. It was a quiet Sunday night, and I was on my couch feeling restless. I had just finished a boring story and didn't want to sleep yet. I started browsing through some tech forums, looking for something interesting to read. I knew about the dark web from articles and films, but I never thought it would be more than that. While the Seattle rain tapped the windows and I had a mug of cheap coffee in hand, I still felt itching boredom and curiosity. One forum thread caught my eye. Someone had posted a link to a .onion site with a message. Want to see something real? Click here. The link was long and strange. It had the tone of a dare, like the kind of challenge someone might post to push others. My heart raced. I knew I shouldn't, but curiosity got the better of me. I set up my old laptop with the Tor browser and decided to see where it went. The Tor browser connected to the dark site after a few moments. When the page loaded, it looked normal. A blank background with some text and a video player in the middle. It said livestream, welcome. I sat forward and muttered, okay, what am I doing? But it was too late to back out. The video showed a man sitting in a metal chair. He was tied up with ropes and leaning forward. His face was bruised and cut, dried blood on his cheek. He looked terrified. The camera was shaking a little, like someone was holding it by hand. The man tried to speak, but all I could hear was a weak groan. For a fraction of a second, I thought it might be staged, like a horror film, but his fear looked absolutely real. Suddenly, I heard another voice, off camera. It was a low, gruff voice, but I couldn't catch the words, just a whisper. The man in the chair whimpered something like, please, help me. Then he said, barely audible, it's happening again. I stared in horror. His eyes were trying to tell me something. I felt sick hearing him plead. My palms were sweaty. I moved the mouse to close the tab, but I must have been shaking too much. The video paused and the page wouldn't respond. I clicked the X on the browser window, and the feed reappeared as if nothing happened. I tried again, and the same thing happened. It was like the page wouldn't let me leave. Every muscle tensed, and I started to shake uncontrollably. I jumped away from my desk. I backed out of the screen and shook my head, but the video kept playing. The tied-up man was staring straight ahead, and I had the awful feeling he was looking at me through the lens. I was breathing so hard, I felt dizzy, and I slammed the laptop shut. The room was silent except for the small sound of my own heavy breathing. Only that faint sound of him crying, "It's happening," echoed in the dark of my living room. My phone vibrated on the desk. A text from my friend Jake popped up. "Finished anything yet? We should hang." My phone felt hot in my hand. I forced myself to tap back a normal reply about the assignment, even though I was still shaking. I set the phone down and switched on the TV to something bland just to get my mind off it. A racing game on a random channel did nothing to ease my mind. Every noise around me sounded ominous. I tried to believe it was just a sick prank or a recording, but everything looked too real. Hours passed and I barely slept. The image of that man stuck in my head. I kept picturing that terrified face and hearing his breath. When dawn came, I felt exhausted. I decided I needed to talk to someone to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. I texted Jake, "Coffee? I need to explain something strange." We met at a quiet cafe the next morning. I was still pale. To look normal, I was carrying 2 cups of coffee because I think Jake thought I was sleep deprived. He was right. I told him every detail. Jake listened and didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. "That's messed up," he said. "It could be some kind of hoax or a prank video. Who knows what those onion sites do? Maybe it isn't even real." He sounded worried but skeptical. I shook my head. It felt real. The guy even said Seattle, sort of, when he was begging. And his eyes moved. He was absolutely convinced someone was watching him. My voice was steadier than I felt. "I swear he looked right into the camera like he could see me." Jake stared at me, concerned. "Check your messages," he said. I opened my phone again. There was a text in our chat from 2:59 a.m. It simply said, "Jake, help." My stomach dropped. "I didn't send that," I whispered. "I swear, I was in bed by then." He frowned and took the phone from my hand. "Weirder and weirder. Maybe your phone glitched, or you fell asleep on it. I didn't drink anything last night. I don't know." I felt a chill creep up my spine. "Maybe it is some hacking thing. Did you try that site again?" Jake asked. I told him I hadn't dared. My hand still trembled as I sipped my coffee. We sat for a few minutes in silence. I needed to get home and calm down. Jake gave me a sympathetic look. If it were me, I'd get a police report on record just in case. After we finished, I left the cafe and went back to my apartment. I reopened my laptop to check the link once more, but it wouldn't load anything at all. The address I had clicked just showed an error. I waited a few minutes, but the page was gone as if it had never existed. I felt a knot in my stomach, thinking someone must have taken it down or changed it because they knew I was watching. Just then, I heard a soft thud from the kitchen. Something heavy had dropped. My eyes darted to the dark hallway. There was no one there. I locked my gaze on the closed door. Another sound. Faint footsteps coming from the hallway. My breath caught in my throat. "Hello?" I whispered, voice shaking. There was no answer. My voice sounded muffled and I could hear only my own quick heartbeat in my ears. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my jacket. My blood ran cold. I finally managed to lock the door behind me, trembling. Relief and panic mingled in my chest. I didn't dare reach for a weapon, my mind too scattered. Instead, I pulled out my phone and texted Jake, fingers trembling. Someone was in my hallway. He called me instantly. "What? Are you okay?" I think so," I stammered. The back door was open a bit. Someone was just outside. "Jake, I'm scared." "Call 911, he said immediately. "I'm on my way." I gave the police the same story I gave Jake. A friend had spotted something outside my door. Minutes later, a patrol car was at my door. I let the officers in. They searched the apartment thoroughly, windows, closets, every corner. They found nothing. No sign of anyone breaking in, no prints, nothing missing. An officer looked at me kindly. "Sir, do you really think someone got in here?" "There's no evidence," he said gently. I shook my head, still too shaken to speak. "I heard footsteps." "I don't know," I whispered. The officers called it a false alarm. They left after taking a report. Jake stayed on the phone with me as the sun set. That night I barely slept. I kept glancing at every shadow in the apartment. The cough of the building's pipes was louder than ever. The next afternoon I forced myself to go out again. I needed somewhere I felt safe. The neighborhood cafe was busy with afternoon chatter, which was oddly comforting. I sat at a corner table and opened my laptop. I needed to pretend I was just working on something. An email had arrived just then. The subject line was blank. The body had just 2 chilling words in plain text: "Finish it." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My whole body went numb as I read it. Finish it? What the hell? My hand shook. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I closed the laptop and left the cafe immediately. The city streets were darkening, empty except for a few late cars. I kept checking behind me as I walked. By the time I got home, it was late evening. I sat at my desk staring at the wall, trying to think of a plan. Every joint in my body felt tight. I needed to stop and rest, but my mind wouldn't shut off. Another message popped up on my laptop screen as soon as I opened it. "We are closer than you think." The words seemed to float in the air. I felt like the blood drained from my face. I closed the laptop again, heart pounding. I didn't know what was happening anymore. Was this some kind of psychological game? A prank? A threat? It didn't feel random. It felt personal, targeted. I stood up and paced the room. Every sound in the apartment suddenly magnified. The hum of the fridge, the ticking of the wall clock, my own shallow breathing. I had the strange sense that if I looked out the window, I'd see something, or someone standing there. I turned the lock on my front door again, even though I'd already checked it. Then I moved to the window and carefully peeked through the blinds. The street was quiet, empty, but then I saw a car was parked across the street. Black, tinted windows, no license plate. I froze. I hadn't seen that car before, not once. And in a neighborhood where you notice every delivery truck and rideshare, that meant something. It hadn't been there earlier. No one was inside. At least no one I could see. I pulled away from the blind slowly. I told myself it was nothing. But that didn't stop the cold crawl of dread up my spine. I went to the kitchen to grab a glass of water, hoping it would calm my nerves. That's when I noticed a piece of paper on the floor, right by the front door, folded, clean, like it had been slid under just minutes ago. I hadn't heard anything. I walked over slowly, crouched down, and picked it up. One line, handwritten in neat, blocky letters. "Thank you for watching." I stared at it. My fingers trembled. I checked the door again. It was still locked, chain in place. No sign of forced entry. No sound, no knock. Just the note. I grabbed my phone and opened the camera app, snapping a photo of the paper. When I looked at the photo in my gallery, my stomach dropped. The note was there, but so was something else. Reflected faintly in the glass frame on the wall, just barely in the shot, was the silhouette of someone standing behind me.